You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. That a stanza 5 from the poem Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. My name is Chaya, and I am here to remind, refresh, reiterate, educate, and enlighten you on the matters in the country and the valiant movement Black Lives Matter. White silence equals white consent, which leads to white violence. When you remain silent in times of injustice, specifically as a white person, you allow for racism and bigotry to continue to flood the masses of this country and the world. To my counterparts, you as a white person have an undeniable amount of privilege simply because of your skin color. The access of your privilege does not mean that you don't suffer from life's problems. It means that you have a surplus in most societal and economical benefits. It means that your skin color doesn't add to your trials. And if you don't use your privilege to speak out in times of hate and injustice, then you are the problem. That means...
Yes, yes.
That means that you allow your privilege to keep you in denial of what's happening in our world. That means that you would rather remain silent because you're scared of the risk. That means that because a situation doesn't directly affect you, you look past it. I mean, God forbid how long before something happens to someone you love like this. Will you then fight? Don't ever let it get to that. Because if you do, that means you're too comfortable. Too comfortable with the fact that our justice system lacks justice for all of our citizens.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? Well, this country was not built for black and brown people, but it was built on the backs of them. Black people are mad because our ancestors worked against their will to make this country what it is. Yet the country that we built and were brought to doesn't fight for us. And when we are acknowledged, it is with a negative connotation. Too many people in this country and the world see black and brown people as a threat and a target. We are a country that's too comfortable meddling in other countries' business, trying to restore or put in place a democratic system, and call ourselves fighting for other human rights. But somehow this superpower we call home lacks the decency to bring about change and reform in our own. We are too comfortable. We are too comfortable with confusing nationalism with patriotism.
Yeah.
Black people are tired and overly exhausted. Those before us and us now have been fighting so that our lives can matter too, T-O-O. Racism will never leave this country as long as the people in it enable racists. We have a president who is openly prejudiced, a chauvinist, an xenophobe, and an illiterate.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
People in this country have been too comfortable with Trump's insensitivity since day one, and instead of questioning it, they encourage it. I saw a post that said, racism is so American that when you protest it, people think you're protesting America. In America, sadly, racism is such a huge part of our society, culture, and norms that this is the daily American life. This quote not only suggests but captivates America and how insufferably comfortable Americans are. This country swims in a pool of systemic racism and oppression. This country has built into the brains of black people slave mentality, where we serve at the leisure of our massa, where whenever we try to build and create our own, we can't because it either gets burnt down, disfigured, or reconstructed. Black people have been raised to be quiet, to respect and tolerate white hate and bigotry. And because of our forced silence, our forced generational silence, it gave and it gives racists the means to still build up black people as a target and an egregious threat. It made me realize how often I had to be the silent black girl to not be seen as the angry black woman. My first experience of racism that I can recall was in 2nd grade. I was called a nigger by a 3rd grader. Now, how did a 3rd grader know this was a word, let alone a word so dehumanizing? And how did he know to associate it with the little black girl sitting on the bus? Because hate is taught. And once embedded, it's hard to remove. But as a generation, as a black woman who can no longer tolerate this hate, we must take this opportunity to rid ourselves of the things that are distasteful and rid our minds of the things we know are dehumanizing to our fellow citizens. Don't take this message as me saying blacks against whites, because it is not that, but in fact it is everyone versus racist. Don't be quietly non-racist, be vocally anti-racist. I've learned that when you talk to people who are more like you, you tend to listen, and that goes for anything. So I say to you as a white person, you have a connection with other white people, and you must start or continue to spread awareness on the injustices in this country and the unfair treatment that black and brown people still go through. Now let's get into the Black Lives Matter movement, which is more than a movement, more than a matter. It is not saying that black lives are above all other lives, but it means that black lives matter too, T-O-O. Saying all lives matter is an unmediated bid to silence Black Lives Matter. If Black Lives Matter bothers you and the saying Blue Lives Matter does not, then the word that really bothers you is the black. These rebuttal slogans are only referenced when Black Lives Matter comes up. It's just a means to look past the fact that there is a disconnect and an imbalance within the people of this country. Now to cops, I'm not screaming F-12 because I have officers in my family. But to not understand that there is a problem with police brutality is a disservice to myself and an absurd amount of negation. Blue lives don't exist, but black ones do. You can take a blue suit off, but you can't take off your skin color. My grandfather served as a Marine and has been a cop for over 20 years, but he's a black man before anything else. He said to me, this is why we must continue to fight and protest unbalanced criminal justice and the judicial system until it is fixed. It'd be a lie if I said I didn't fear for my grandfather's life and others who are in my family and law enforcement, because they do in fact put their lives on the line, but they are also aware of the line they put themselves on. They choose to get up every morning and stay in their line of work, knowing they may be severely injured or possibly killed. But black and brown people don't fill out W-2s for being black. We were born this way and we will die black, but we shouldn't have to have our lives undervalued or become moving targets when our skin is in our line of profession. Please know that your choice of occupation does not make your life more valuable than mine or the next black person or any person for that matter. Just because you serve at the pleasure of the law does not mean you're above it. I believe that there are no good cops until the good cops hold the bad ones accountable.
There you go. Yeah.
Cops live by a code of backing one another and not holding each other liable for their wrongdoings. Most cops are power hungry and abusive. People aren't screaming F all cops because they think individual cops are bad. People are screaming F all cops because of the abusive power and the prolific assumptions created by these police departments focusing on people of color. People are saying the slogan because of the cruel mistreatment and excessive force used on citizens with permission given by their heads of department. The statement, not all cops are bad, may be true, but people have to understand that not all black people are threats. I mean, seriously, at what age do young black boys stop being handsome and become a danger to society? It's time to understand that the saying good cops is irrelevant, for history shows that good people do bad things when told to by authorities.
That's right.
My next announcement is to the young people gathered. I challenge you to unlearn the ways that your openly racist and prejudiced parents and grandparents have taught you. Dig yourself out of denial and fight for basic human rights. I'd be telling a fib if I said some of this violence, rioting, looting, whatever you want to call it, isn't absurd, but to me it's understood. Violence is what we were taught. Black people sit in poverty while being handed guns and dime bags at 10 years old because that's the way the world told them it had to be. These kids aren't just getting arrested and caught on their crimes alone. They're targeted, seen as immediate threats. These neighborhoods of color are over-policed, and because of that, the incarceration rate is higher for black people. Understand that black people are more than aware on black crime. Yes, it exists and it's terrible. But for every act of a crime a black person commits, more times than not, there are immediate convictions. When a black person dies at the hand of a racist white man or a corrupt cop, the people in this country have to justify and find reasoning for why it was okay to kill this man when it's clearly evident that excessive force, hell, that murder wasn't needed. But for some reason, when a police officer abuses his power, we try to hurry, clear his sketchy history, try to hide the fact that he abuses his wife and his children. It takes for millions of protesters, thousands of petitions, and for America to be burning to the ground for people to hear the cry of the bereaved. And for some reason, when a white person kills a black person, or anyone for that matter, specifically mass murderers, they are given beverages and coddled like babies. Bringing up black on black crime sounds something like, well, y'all kill each other, why can't we kill you too? There's such a decouple between whites and other races. There is a disparity within our country. And so as long as the privileged remain silent, the voices of the underprivileged will remain unheard. It is time to defund the police and start better funding and endorsing the school systems in the city where blacks and other minorities have higher residency. Increased education reduces crime. Dr. King said our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. This is so much bigger than police brutality. The injustices are deeply rooted, from our educational system, housing, colorism, public health, the wage gap, hiring inequity, the privatization of prisons, sexual harassment, and sadly so much more. So please, I ask of you to hear my voice. And leave here understanding that you must use your voice because your voice has power. Use your voice to support blacks and people of color. Actively speak out and mean it. Have conversations and educate your peers and family. Remove people from your life who find more of a problem with the riots than the murder. Expose racist teens. Racist teens. No, it is not extreme and it is not excessive because these are the same teenagers who will be given a chance at universities, who are allowed them to become healthcare workers, teachers, lawyers, politicians, real estate developers, etc. It is time to start holding people who are old enough accountable for their flagrant hate.
Yeah.
Give yourself a moment to research and try to understand what it's like to be a person of color. Don't be the evil eye glaring from the outside, but step in on the inside for an intolerable and agonizing feel of what injustice feels like, of what hate and misconduct feels like, of what being black and having your back pinned against the wall so that other people can be ahead of you constantly feels like. Sign petitions and donate to organizations such as one geared toward freeing innocent black men and women in prison. Donate and dedicate your time to helping the underprivileged schools in the city. Don't sit in a pool of denial, knowing that people are being persecuted, executed, and silenced for wanting justice and equal opportunity. Don't allow yourself to think that things aren't happening because you don't see them or because it's not happening to you. That is pure ignorance. If someone is telling you something is hurting them, listen, take heed and see what you can do about it. This is not a trend. I repeat, this is not a trend. My life is not a trend. My family's life is not a trend. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Arthur Sterling, Camille Rice, Ahmaud Arbery, Mike Brown, Yolanda Haskell, Freddie Gray, Amber Monroe, Tanisha Anderson, Tatiana Jefferson, Malcolm Jean, and sadly so much more. They are not a trend. Your hashtag and your black square was not enough.
That's
our
right.
lives are counting on you.
Yeah.
It is our job as young people, our job as the next generation to burn down our current system and create a new, fair, and just one together. One that is truly for the people and by the people, so that our children and their children's children can go in unity and safety and equally. I'll leave you with this quote from Dr. King. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over by the good people. Your life matters. Your rights matter. Your fight matters and your voice matters. Use it for all that is good. Don't stop fighting for the human rights of those in this country and the rest of the world, know that we are not a sensitive generation, but one, in fact, that will no longer tolerate racism, homophobia, and xenophobia, sexism, anti-Semitism, and blatant prejudices against human lives and human rights. We must now change the narrative. We must keep shaking tables and having the uncomfortable conversations.